Should Fire Emblem be more hardcore than it is currently? So this is something that I think about a lot when doing these little challenge playthrough runs. So what a challenge playthrough is it's a maddening run, in this case in Three Houses, where you limit what you can do to make the game harder, to like artificially increase the difficulty. So in this case, I didn't allow any auxiliary battles, paralogs, or monastery of any kind. So I couldn't recruit people, I couldn't do like gardening or fishing or literally anything. And my professor level is like super low. I have just the starting units plus the units that are forced recruits like Sedith, Flame, Gilbert in this case. But one thing that I've realized from doing this is that not only is the game much more fun because it feels like the stakes are higher, but you have to think critically more often to actually break down the enemy position. So like this map is a perfect example. So I've tried to beat this map 2 times so far with this team. This is my first attempt doing a Blue Lions playthrough of this kind. And the first attempt, I reunited all my troops. We killed all of this side of the board and then killed these guys here, grabbed the siege weapons. I was out of pulses. There's some ambush spawns that had come up. I was out of pulses and I set all my flyers up here, and then I had some waiting on the wall. And then a bunch of enemies spawned in last second out of nowhere and killed them all. And then I was out of pulses, so I had to reset. And then the second attempt, I actually pushed through the center. But pushing the center on this map is crazy, especially with units that are so underleveled like my units are. And we got ambushed by like a few ambush spawns. All these like dragon things attack you. They don't move until you push the center. So pushing the center is objectively worse than pushing this flank. Ambush spawns, I think, are cheap difficulty. But this has definitely been like the most fun I've had with the game, especially on Maddening, because there's so many gimmicks to easily beat Maddening otherwise, that when you limit the amount of resources and units you can have, it greatly increases the difficulty and forces you to actually use every little resource you can. Even right now, like if I go to my economy, let's go buy an item. I have 17 gold. Oh, well, let's just sell an item, right? Maybe we can just sell something to buy something. Well, the problem with that is there's nothing to sell at all. So, like, in this playthrough, economy matters. Stealing items as a thief matters for certain maps where that's possible. If you can steal, like, an artifact, you can sell it for gold. Or if you can steal a concoction or a master seal or anything, you can sell it for gold or use it. So, like, you might notice I don't have vulneraries or concoctions because I had to sell them all. Like, none of my units have them. Like, literally none of them. I had to sell excess artifacts, so everyone has exactly one artifact. I tried to keep some of the best ones, but you can see that, like, Flame has, like, a lamppost shield, for example, because I was only able to get a single healing staff and magic staff, and they're being used. But I think the game needs more restrictions overall. I think that's a good thing. One thing I really like about Fire Emblem, though, is the idea of managing resources and there being only a finite amount of things. I also like pressure. So, like, for example, if there's a village, like if this was a village and you could visit this before an enemy and get an item that you can only get here, or one of the few of a thing, and it only is here, and you have to, like, race against time to get it, I think that's a cool concept. I think with games like Three Houses, they kind of made things too easy. There's too many systems. There's too many ways to get out of things. Like, if we look at some of these units, like level 35, level 32, level 31, level 31. These are underleveled for this map. The enemies are like level 48. Let's see if there's anything higher than 48. There might be like some 50s in the mix. Bunch of level 48s. But you can see here that we're like drastically underleveled. And I have a save file where I'm like on chapter 14 and my units are level 30 just from using the monastery and auxiliary battles and paralogs and things like this. So there's all these like get out of jail free cards that at any time the player can activate that, in my opinion, get in the way of core game design. I think that modern games in general have become too complicated, and this this desire to add more systems is actually cheapening and worsening the experience of a lot of modern games. And I think less is more in a lot of situations. I'm not necessarily a minimalist, but I think that in its current form, most modern games are needlessly complicated. there's too many mechanics, there's too many things to know, and the overall effect of these things is that like one main thing is usually more effective, right? So for example, understanding how battalion stat boosts work when you put a battalion on a unit effectively means that you know how to equip battalions that mitigate a downside or strengthen an upside to make a unit more effective. So for example, putting accuracy and damage increase battalions on axe users mitigates the downside of axes while boosting the upside of axes, which is their high strength. Same thing is true for spears. Getting high attack damage increase spear battalions, or like battalions on spear users and sword users, mitigates the downsides of the less damage they deal versus axes. So like there's like the battalion damage increase, there's like the saint statue boosts, there are all these like miscellaneous things that get in the way of the actual gameplay that are just like these like maintenance things. And I think maintenance things are fine, but I think for a game like Fire Emblem, it should be like 5 to 10% of your time should be spent doing maintenance stuff, and then 90% should be spent playing the game, in my opinion. Where to cut scenes and whatever factor in, maybe take away 10% of the gameplay and throw in 10% cutscenes. So it's like 80% of the time it's gameplay. In the case of Three Houses, if you want to do like optimal runs where you're just like min-maxing, you're going to be doing a lot of grinding. Even in like this maddening challenge run I did, I had to do a ton of grinding to get my units masteries. Here's the other thing too, right? You might think, oh, all these systems are cool, but they're actually very oppressive. Like the fact that Death Blow exists and Darting Blow exist, and the fact that I can get those means that if I'm doing a challenge run where my units are terrible, I'm pretty much forced to get those, because what's the alternative? I don't get those, now I just deal significantly less damage. Like the fact that you have to build units, like you have to equip like a loadout, and there's all these loadout skills, and there's like all this mastery stuff, this actually gets in the way of gameplay. Like this isn't like a good thing. It might seem like it is because it's customization, but grinding out class masteries, especially when it takes a long time, just prevents you from playing the game more. And instead of the game being more about making tactical decisions and using things correctly, it's more about increasing your stats and increasing your statistical advantage per unit in relation to enemy stats so that they can kill those enemies and survive getting attacked by them, rather than you being tactically good at a strategy game. And this is why in the one video I went over, does min-maxing ruin Fire Emblem? I think it kind of does in a few ways. I think it kind of takes away from the tactical aspect of the game and shifts it to this like needless complexity that it, you know, is just kind of annoying. Like the fact that Lance Reaver is not like a thing for axes and you have to equip it, like Lance Breaker in this case, I have to equip the weapon triangle optionally. It's not a thing in the game by default. It's something that I have to manually equip. I think that's a pitfall of this game, where the weapon triangle exists, but only when you intentionally equip it, but otherwise it's not present. So like if I have a sword and you have a lance and I attack you and you don't have Sword Breaker, there's no downside, right? Whereas previously, that's like built into like the GBA Fire Emblems, and you know, I'm not sure about like the Wii. I didn't have like a Wii and a Wii U and all the other crap and like a DS, but I'm sure those ones have it as well. But I could be wrong. Maybe they have needlessly complex systems. Like I've heard about the pairing system, which seems kind of stupid. It seems like a kind of exploit. The other thing too is the more complexity you have, the more exploits you're going to have, because it's hard to balance everything and devs have limited time. So if you want to make your game really balanced, make it simple. It's really that easy. Just reduce the complexity. But like even this, like why is it even telling me he has magic? Why does he even have magic? He's a Wyvern Lord. Why can he also use bows now? Like why is it a thing that everyone can use everything? I haven't tested it, but can you use brawling on a horse, or on like a horse and like a Pegasus Knight and shit? Like I haven't tested that, but is that a thing, or is it not allowed? It looks like it's not allowed based on the skill level thing, but that'd be an interesting thing. Or I wonder if you can dismount and do it. That's interesting too. Like just having a Wyvern Lord that dismounts and just beats people up. But everyone can use everything. There's all these systems. There's all this complexity. I think we need to return to simplicity. But most gamers aren't going to advocate for that, and most people making products, you know, making the games themselves aren't going to just wake up one day and be like, you know what, things need to be simpler. Because everything is pushing towards complexity. Like, everything's all about progression, leveling up, equipping new, better items, you know, making builds and loadouts. Like, for this, like this game, you have your unit with its abilities and crests. You have your actual ability loadout that like the 5 slots. You have your skills you invest in. You have your equipable items and weapons you use. You can upgrade them or not. You have your equipable like passive item. It can be a shield. It can be a ring, whatever. You have other weapons, other weapon types you can bring with you. There's like stat boosters. There's all these like min-max decisions to make. But when it comes to the actual gameplay, it's never like, what position should I attack? Because after testing this map, you attack the flank. Because it doesn't trigger tons of ambush spawns and these 4 dragons to all simultaneously push you. And funny enough, when you push the flank, you can attack this dragon and the other ones don't care. You can just kill it. You can just straight up kill it. And then you can bait this meteor mage into attacking you. Bait this into attacking you. This guy will aggro. Set up a stride. Basically, to beat this map, I'm going to set up a stride here. I'm going to capture this with like a pulse or 2 left, set up a stride, use Blessing on my flyers so I can survive a counterattack by Hubert, and then just rush him. That's what I'm going to do to him. So, and we're just going to fly from like here over and easily get to him. That's how I'm going to beat this map. I'm not going to pick apart the center, which is what I would like to do, which seems to be harder and more like rewarding. But I'm just going to literally ignore the center, let the stupid mage that comes every turn to attack me, push the flank, seize it, take the siege weapons, kill this dragon for the hell of it, and then kill Hubert. And I'll probably gimmick Edelgard too, because there's so many systems in the game, it's not hard to do this. There's no like the thing with Warp back in the day is it's like a staff that has like 2 or 3 uses, right? So you use it through an entire playthrough, right? You can use it a few times throughout the entirety of a playthrough. But in this game, you get 6 rescues. You can have multiple units with 2 warps each map. You can have 2 strides. You can have a few units with stride. You can have like 2 or 3 stride units to just spam stride, which, you know, with flyers is insane. There's all these ways to break the game. You could even just spam like meteor and bolting if you wanted to kill things. Like, you could probably even kill bosses like this. Let me see. Does he have counterattack at any range? Okay, so he can use magic infinitely, but he doesn't have... You can kill him with bolting. You could just kill him with bolting at range if you can get within range. He doesn't have the counterattack thing. That's another way of killing him. You can hit him with 2 meteors. You can kill him with bolting. That's a gimmick. There's a lot of gimmicks in this game. If you had like Thyrsus, here, let's count the range here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you had Thyrsus, or even just not, like this is bolting range right here. You can get to this tile relatively easily. If you had a Dancer, you could just like bolting him twice and potentially just kill him out of like from here pretty easily. If you had Thyrsus, you could hit him from back here, like one of these. If you had range +1, you could hit him from like here. You could probably even hit him from over here, to be honest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, if you just have Caduceus or Thyrsus, you can hit him from that tile over here. You could just keep bolting him, hitting him with bolting until he's dead. There might be a healer though. Let's see. He is on a healing tile that heals 30%. Let me see. I don't think there's any healers near him though. And if you had a silencer, you could always just silence the healer from far away. Yeah, there's not really healers near him. Banshee and Silence. Physic. Okay, this has Physic. So I guess you'd have to deal with this. But you could kill this with bolting too. Or just send like a strided flyer, warp a flyer, kill it, something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to talk about how a lot of modern games have too many mechanics. And instead of being a simple, hard challenge that's hard and fair and simple, A lot of games tend to push the player more towards the min-maxing route, where they prefer you optimize a unit. So like the issue of a unit attacking and killing a thing is more about stats and min-maxing and less about strategy. It's true that there is some strategy to killing things. So for example, attacking this with a rapier, a mace, a hammer, or magic is always going to be better than with not those things. So there's some elements of strategy, but like if we're looking at this team, I think the strategy is clear. It's just flying spam. The strategy is very clear. It's Wyvern Lords and Falcon Knights. And then mages if you can get some good gremmaries, but... And then whatever else you want. You can run a dancer or something, or some other utilities, snipers, whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. Definitely let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this interesting. I think we need to return to a simple strategy. I think this game lacks like the fundamentals of strategy in a lot of ways, where there are tactics involved, but the strategy is usually just killing enemies. It's not like, it's very rarely, oh, let's kill these enemies and grab this siege weapon and make use of it, because when you kill enemies and grab their siege weapons, everything that needs to be hit by those siege weapons is usually out of range, so you can't even take advantage of things like that. Like, you can kind of use this to trigger these, but then, like, you actually can get hit, I think, by this guy. Yeah, you can see his attack range. So if you use a siege weapon and hit that horse, for example, to pull it, which is really the only real use of this siege weapon, is hitting this, safely pulling these, and hitting this. So it's like a small stepping stone that doesn't really help you. That's basically just something being used against you. So you don't really get to feel the power of using this thing. It's more of like an annoying thing. Same thing with this. The only real use of this is triggering this, potentially. Actually, no, it can hit you, so you can't even do it. You use it in that case. You have to kill this through other means, because, you know, once you commit to this, you die. You could use flyers to fly on top of this and shoot and then canto. But you can use this to, like, start picking apart this. But this doesn't move anyways, so you can just fly up to it and start attacking it. Maybe you could hit this guy. You could do that with a flyer easily. You don't just sit here, 1, 2, 3, 4 move, 1, 2, 3, 4 canto. You could do that with a melee weapon. With a bow, you could go here, so just 3, and then you have 5 move to canto. Yeah, I think they need to think more about the strategy of the game and of your unit selection than they do currently, because when everyone can become everything, it kind of creates a problem where maps need to be generic, because they don't know what tools you have. They don't know if you have rescue, they don't know if you have warp, they don't know if you have physic. Even though they give you a healer, that like every house gets a healer with physic, they don't know that you're going to run that healer. They don't know that you're going to have flyers or not, or mounted units or not, or brawlers or not, or gremmaries. They don't know what you're going to have. So you kind of get this generic map situation where it has to be beatable with most things. And then, you know, it cheapens the effectiveness of a flyer because everyone's a flyer. I think the older Fire Emblem games handled it well when you only had like 2 or 3 flyers, because then you actually had to be smart about how you use them. Now most Fire Emblem games can be like hugely exploited in a lot of ways, but at least in the previous games, you'd get like a Pegasus Knight or 2 and maybe like a Wyvern Lord, like a Wyvern Rider. And in those games, you only had like 3 to 4 of them, so you better use them carefully. Whereas in these games, they're just so much better than everything else. Like flying, canto, putting bows on them, their weapon types, brave weapons. It's like so absurdly crazy. The other thing too is like everyone can get brave weapons. There's too much like I was about to say project creep. There's too much power creep in these games, and I think that's like one of the fundamental issues. I think they need to consider balance. Like, it shouldn't be the case that a flying canto unit, like either one of these, is just as effective as a unit that's on a horse, because even though they both have 8 move, flying is way better. Like, look at the movement tiles these can move to versus Dimitri. He can go up to here, and that's it. They can just fly over the wall and start going to town. So yeah, so they need to have more careful counters, more like meaningful strategy. There's no like strategic decisions in the game where it's like, do you want to take this difficult fort and then it'll help you throughout the rest of the game, or do you want to just like ignore the fort and like try to starve it out, but then it's going to be, you know, it's going to cost you more resources, you're going to have to fight some more skirmishes and shit like that. There's no decisions like that, but there's decisions where it's like, who do you want to take out for tea time? Who do you want to pretend you're dating? Which anime waifu is for you? Yeah, I think it's lost the script a little bit, but at least Maddening's kind of fun.